Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Cinema. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And today we are talking about Perfect Blue, the Japanese
Yes.
anime horror, psychological thriller, weird, strange, messed up movie from 1997. Dylan, had you seen this before? What was your, knowledge or awareness of this movie before we headed into this?
I had never seen it before. I had heard really good things. Definitely shows up on a lot of cinephile lists, a lot of, top animated movies of all times, top mind-bending plots of all times, or stuff like that. When we reviewed Black Swan, it certainly came up a lot when I was researching for that movie as a parallel. So heard a
Yep.
lot of great things, been waiting to watch it for a while, and we finally got around to it.
Yeah, this was really exciting to get into. Also, just not like a good or a bad thing by itself, but I was very excited that this movie was only 81 minutes long. You don't see too many just like really
Yeah.
compact movies
Mhm,
these days,
mhm.
so that was kind of cool to get into.
Yep,
Before we get into it, though, would you like to tell the people what Perfect Blue is about?
absolutely. Perfect Blue from 1997. A pop singer gives up her career to become an actress, but she slowly goes insane when she starts being stalked by an obsessed fan and what seems to be a ghost of her past.
Yeah, so I think this felt like a perfect movie for us to kick off October and
For
spooky
sure.
season here.
Mhm.
Really quick, apologies, my voice is a little hoarse. Spent 2 weeks or 2 nights this week at the Twins Blue Jays games. Had to rock the
Yes.
Twins hat today and screamed a lot. So voice is still recovering. It's
Mhm,
definitely better than it was on like Wednesday evening,
mhm.
but I think we're still coming back a little bit. But
Glad you brought
yeah,
that up.
I think this is a fun movie to get into at the beginning of October. So, really quickly, at a glance here, Perfect Blue, 1997, director Satoshi Kon. This was his debut movie, which you and I are always very
Wow.
interested in seeing or just kind of learning about, what was this director's first movie. 'Cause
Mhm.
he's a very acclaimed anime director. He also did Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers, and Paprika, which was a huge
Oh.
inspiration for Inception.
Mhm.
And as you and I kind of discussed before we started recording, Perfect Blue had a very big influence on Darren Aronofsky. Black
Yeah.
Swan, Requiem for a Dream. I think the bathtub scene from Perfect Blue is kind of mirrored in Requiem for a Dream.
Mhm.
He died in 2010 at the age of 46 due to pancreatic cancer.
Oof.
So lost a really good director way too
Gosh.
soon.
Yeah,
But,
wow.
I was a big fan or am a big fan of Tokyo Godfathers. So I was really excited to see this. And this is
Mhm.
maybe his most acclaimed movie in some respects. And this was kind of the one of those four that I've listed that I hadn't actually seen. So I was really excited to get into this. Really small budget, $830,000. I
Wow.
could only find box office information for the US and the UK.
Okay.
Kind of odd. So that was $768,000, but
Mhm.
this clearly made more than like $5 in Japan. So I'm sure this movie
Yeah.
turned some kind of profit.
Yeah.
Although I think this is one of those movies that I saw it show up somewhere on a list of like the best movies from the 90s and 2000s that nobody's ever seen. This feels
Oh.
like one of those
Mhm.
movies that kind of was way ahead of its time and has grown in appreciation and popularity kind of year by year as it's gone on. I don't know if it was too popular right when it came out,
Mm.
but as you mentioned before, it shows up on a lot of like cinephile lists. So 83% on Rotten Tomatoes more closely resembles kind of the reception when the movie came out, I think. But then an 8 on IMDb, and here a 4.4 on Letterboxd, and the number 53 movie of all time on the Letterboxd top 250. So that's
Wow.
kind of where we talk about it's for people who love movies and are really, really into them. This movie seems to be very popular. Maybe another one of those movies that if you're not kind of a diehard movie fan and consumer and
Mhm.
watcher, you may never have heard of this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people who haven't.
Yep. So, very recently, the number 12 movie of the 1990s from IndieWire, they released that
Wow.
list within the last year, I believe. You and I talked about that pretty
Mhm.
extensively when it came out.
Yeah.
And then Slash Film named it the scariest animated movie of all time in a list they updated this just a month ago on September 9th.
Interesting. Okay.
which I mean, I think that's pretty accurate probably, but we'll get
Yeah.
into that a little more in a bit here.
Hmm.
Really quick before we get into all of that, like the video. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to keep getting updates on whenever we do one of these long discussions on, I want to say almost at a new movie. We tend to not do new movies here, but a
Yeah.
new movie for us. We try to find movies that we haven't seen before, or at least maybe saw once when we were like 11 and don't really feel like we got a good grasp on it.
Hmm.
Try to average about one a week, and we got spooky season that we're kicking off here with Perfect Blue.
Yes.
And we'll be doing 4 more, hopefully, kind of older classics and maybe some cult favorites and hidden gems
Yep.
in the horror genre, starting with our next episode, which will be Possession from 1981, which you and I finally
Yes.
watched last night and are
Hmm.
still unpacking. I'm not remotely ready to share my thoughts on
Yeah,
that
me
movie.
neither. No, that's just a teaser that we will.
Yeah,
The next one will be Possession. Definitely a
absolutely.
cinephile favorite.
For sure. So, diving into opening statements, I can start here because I
Go
feel
for it.
like I watched this sort of randomly like 3 weeks ago and
Okay.
then messaged you and pretty much said, we have to do an episode on this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah,
It's
and I'm glad you did.
crazy. And yeah, and I did rewatch it this morning, like just before we're recording this.
You did. Okay. Yeah, I
I
was
did.
not
Yeah,
able
I
to
had
watch
to. It
it.
was 3 weeks ago. I felt like, and
Yeah,
you watched this like 3, 4, or 5 days ago, something like
something like
that.
that. Yeah.
I felt like I needed a refresher. And again, it's short enough where it was just kind of like, okay, I could get up at like 8 a.m. and just kind of crank this out. Weird movie to
Mhm.
watch right away in the morning, though. I'll say, not really recommended
Yeah.
time, but
Sets a weird tone for the rest of the day.
absolutely. But for me, my opening statement is just it's kind of the same, even on a rewatch, as it was immediately after I finished it the first time, which is just I'm not 100% sure what's real in this movie and what's not, and that doesn't really matter to me.
Hmm.
I loved every second of it.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that's something that
Hmm.
I feel like I will often get myself caught up in on, is there too much surrealism here? Are they packing too many things on top of each other? What's real? What's not? I need to be able to identify these things.
Hmm.
And with this movie, for whatever reason, maybe just because of how well it's made, I just found myself not caring necessarily about the answers to those things.
Yeah.
Not that I'm
Yeah.
not curious about those things. I find them very interesting discussion topics, and it's fun to read about and talk about kind of interpretations on what's real and what's not as far as this movie goes. But I don't think there's an answer that I can see or settle on that will make me like this any less.
Mm. That's a really good point. Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I think part of the thing that makes it great is um, it's a movie where the main character kind of doesn't know what's going on and is losing her grip. And you, as the audience, a lot of times in those movies, you, as the audience, can figure out what is actually going on. So it's more just seeing if the main character can figure it out or not. But you, as the audience, have figured it out. This one, it makes you as the audience second guess even what you think is like the last 30 minutes. It really, I was like, I had to admit that I actually didn't know, like, and then
Yeah.
and then that kind of forced you to almost just kind of shut that part of your brain off and just be like, well, I'm just going to experience the rest of this movie then and just kind of
Yes.
see how it makes me feel if they pulled it off. And I felt great when it ended. It felt like it had an iconic ending, like it, and like you said, there's still enough gray there where I didn't walk away being like, all right, check this box, check this box. Like, I can write a paper on this and tell them exactly what this was about now. Like, I don't.
Right. Or also how there are times when I feel like a movie can kind of end on an ambiguous note, but it doesn't really earn that at all. It's just like it's literally just to like mess with you.
Hmm.
And it has no bearing on the rest of the movie or like
It
the
feels
success
lazy.
of the story. And it feels lazy, yeah, or cheap
Hmm.
sometimes, I think. And with this, it's kind of the point about the blurred lines between reality and fantasy and fandom and obsession
Hmm.
and all of these things coming together where like the topics of this movie and kind of the nature of the plot and the themes lend itself to that type of ending and to a movie
Yes.
that's open to like dozens of different kinds of interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
and kind of rewatches and discussions and all that stuff. So it fits this type of story really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reading a lot of like Roger Ebert's like I can't remember what they're called again. I've read a couple of them, like his favorite movies or great movies
Okay.
books, where
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of compiled essays on like movies that he gave 4 out of 4 stars to, basically. I haven't run across Perfect Blue in
Mm-hmm.
any of those yet, but there are some things that I've read from him that have kind of said like this movie is emotionally true and that's why it works. And that's kind of what I keep coming
Mm,
back to with Perfect Blue, where emotionally everything just felt so right
yeah.
and true and honest and real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that's why it doesn't matter to me what's quote unquote real or not. Or again, not to say that it doesn't matter. I find it interesting, but
Yeah.
it's not going to change my opinion of the movie in any way,
Yeah.
in the way that I felt about it and my desire to revisit it, because it's just emotionally true from beginning to end.
Really well said. Yeah, my opening statements is one of the best put together animated films I've ever seen. The look, the sound, the character work, the plot, everything just complements itself, where it just feels like a total complete package, pretty much
Yeah.
from the very beginning. And it's so bold and it's so confident, like things just start happening and it's just like hard to look away. And um I it's interesting because the beginning, it starts with a very kind of colorful and bright and shiny like concert, like pop concert, and it maintains kind of like there's a lot, it's very colorful and it's very bright. She's trying to become an actress, so a lot of
Yep.
scenes with cameras rolling, yada yada. But it very quickly establishes like this dark kind of like grisly underside and like kind of aura that made me at least think kind of like a 90s like David Fincher movie like Seven. It kind
Yeah.
of like it was like bright and colorful and beautifully animated, but it also had the same feel of like Seven. And so it was dark, but
Sure.
it was intriguing and there was danger. And one interesting point that I read online is that it has the same moments that a lot of Miyazaki moments have, where it'll just be like a quiet moment. And in Miyazaki, those are always normally like beautiful shots of like nature or something. And in
Hmm.
this, there's those moments too, but they're creepy. They're like you're
Yeah.
outside the window slowly looking in at
Hmm.
her. And you know that she is having kind of a breakdown, thinking, is someone watching me? Is someone following me? And then it plays into all sorts of weird moments where it's like you the viewer are doing that, like you are watching her every move and trying to figure out. And so you get it forms this really weird relationship between the audience and the main character,
Yeah.
which I just thought was really unique. And yeah, just really well done. So that'd be my opening statement, just all around great. And yeah, I can really like, without, my last sentence was, without fully understanding it, I can totally appreciate it for
Yes.
what
I
it
think,
is.
yeah, we're both, I think, kind of right there.
Yeah.
And this did remind me, you mentioned one of the best put together animated movies you've ever seen. I
Mhm.
do keep a running list of my top 100 animated movies of all
You do?
time.
How
And this was
high?
kind of the one, not the one, but one of the big ones that I hadn't seen.
Uh-huh.
And so it did debut its way all the way up at number 26 for me.
Wow. Okay.
Right
That's
between, so behind Who Framed Roger Rabbit and one spot ahead of Into the Spider-Verse.
Ooh, wow. Interesting choice. Interesting.
Yeah.
I probably would have those two flipped, but
Okay. That's fair. I
but
mean,
yeah, Who Framed Roger Rabbit's pretty, yeah, that's a pretty impressive animated
that's
movie.
one that's grown in appreciation for me the older I get.
Yeah, yeah.
But that did remind me, I just wanted to include that.
Mhm.
So good opening statements there, I think. And on to defining moments. And this is, despite being 81 minutes long, I
So
think
many.
there are so many here. So I'll kick off with a few that I think aren't necessarily as, they're not like full scenes,
Mhm.
but just little like 5-second moments that I found incredibly effective. The first one for me is right away when she's performing her final performance with Cham,
Same.
and you've got the stalker security guard guy, and he's kind of standing there on the side of the stage, and he puts his hand up,
Mhm.
and so that he can view her standing like in the palm of his hand, like he's
Mhm.
holding her.
Yeah.
And
It
that
shows
was
the
kind of
camera
the
from his
moment.
point of view.
Yes. And you and I have talked before about how there are times when you're watching like when you just realize that you're watching a movie where the director just has an entire vision just on lock.
Yes.
And sometimes they're just really small moments. Like with Portrait of a Lady on Fire, it was just like when she sat there in front of the fire drying off after
Yeah.
like coming in from the rain at night, and there's really nothing happening, but there's just something about it where I was just like, oh, this is going to be amazing.
Or the beginning of There Will Be Blood, how PTA starts it with like a 8-minute long like
Yeah.
montage of the main character just out by
Mhm.
himself prospecting.
Yeah.
Like it's just the confidence that you just sense.
Yes.
You're like,
And
okay,
with
this is
this,
good.
that image right away, which is something I don't think I've ever seen before, and was just such an incredible shot and so well just like conceived and executed,
Yep.
that was instantly, I was like, okay, this movie's going to live up to the hype. Like I
Mhm.
just felt fully confident at that moment that this was going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And then when I started to feel like, okay, I understand why this shows up for horror movies, like they're going to nail the tone here. It was another small moment, but when she's reading that first fax and you kind of get this feeling that like somebody's watching her, and then the wind blows the curtains kind of
Yeah.
into the room, that right there I thought was phenomenal.
Mhm.
Because that
Mhm.
was like, okay, like we haven't gotten to the quote unquote like horror scenes yet, but as
Yeah.
far as setting a tone
Mhm.
for like an adult R-rated animated movie
Yeah.
that shows up on horror lists and is streaming on like Shudder.
Mhm.
That was the moment I was like, okay, I see where this is going now with tone, and this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then really, I mean, there are so many other memorable like full scenes, but I had to go with the murder of the photographer.
Yeah, I had that one too.
With the way that that's cut,
Mhm.
I just thought that like that was stunning, and the editing in this, we can get into maybe a little bit more later, but I thought that scene with the way it's cut with first off, just like a brutal murder
Yeah, like
with
it
the
establishes.
screwdriver into the eye, like, oh
Yeah,
my god.
like slasher movie level of violence, like
Yeah,
peppered in, to again to your point, establish like it belongs in the horror genre as
right.
and a couple people die pretty brutally. A lot of, getting stabbed by something sharp and then gushing blood and then it's everywhere and like really emotional shots of like the people's faces when these things are
Yeah,
happening.
it doesn't linger though, like,
Yeah.
it's the appropriate amount of brutality,
Mhm.
I think, to understand what's happening and to feel it in the moment, but then, like, "Okay, we've done this, we can keep going."
Yeah, yeah. It
You know?
doesn't
So I
linger.
that one for me, I mean, I think the photographer killing or the one in the parking garage/elevator. I don't know. What do you have
Oh
for
yeah.
your
The parking
defining moments?
The parking garage elevitor was really well done. Just
Yeah,
felt
with
like
the music
classic.
and, like, the boombox by itself in the elevator, I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. I had the opening concert as well. I had the rooftop chase when she's being chased by
Yeah.
the vision or her other self or whatever along the rooftops. Because it goes on for a while. It's a legitimate like chase, and just the imagery of what she's running from and then the music, the score that they put behind
Yeah.
it, so creepy and unsettling and just so effective. And I feel like that's one of those things. I mean, a lot of this time when I was watching this movie, I felt like I was watching something that influenced movies I've seen that came out
Yeah.
after it. I
Mhm.
got a lot of that with the tone, with all sorts of things. Um, and so that rooftop scene in particular, because then I was like, man, like what is like so? Because I kind of had the grip on reality, but like if this is really happening or is this all in her head? Like either way, like what. And then the way that ends, and then you've really upped the ante and the stakes as far as like, well, did she just get run over by a truck?
Yeah.
Like, in which case, and then I pause and I'm like, there's still like half the movie left. Like, it just, yeah, really good job of sowing doubt into my mind while also still making me really like invested in the character and
Wait,
wanting
which
her.
part are you talking about then? Because I was thinking of kind of the climactic chase.
Um, no, I think it's the first time when, or is she chasing her? Is she chasing the fig? There's one where she's getting chased, I feel like, across the rooftops and it's
Yeah,
following
that's
her.
the climactic moment where she almost gets hit, and then there's, like, 5 minutes left in the movie after that.
Okay.
But there are other moments when she sees the sort of, like, hallucination version of herself that
Yeah.
moves along like when it's jumping up on the top of the like the streetlights.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
And
that
she has
happens earlier too. So it's easy to kind of, I think, meld those together, which honestly is like sort of the point of this movie anyway.
yeah. Yeah. Like who's really chasing who?
Yeah.
But yeah, the one that was in the middle of the movie, that was definitely one of the defining moments. But I guess they both are after talking about them like that. Um, and then I also had the just kind of the way that they use like her apartment, like the times when she'd keep waking up there and it would be slightly
Yeah.
different but still the same, and the way that it just established her apartment as like a one set place amongst all the madness, kind of. We're going to all these crazy places, we're jumping, there's a lot of fast cutting, but it did a good job of establishing like this is her one safe haven is her apartment, but then also tearing that down and being like actually it's like not at all.
Well, it was also, yeah.
Right.
So we'll get into that kind
Uh-huh.
of in a bit here, but I did want to jump off that last thing you said too, where just to add to it, I loved so much the design of how the sort of ghost or hallucination Mima moves.
Yes.
That just sort of like ankle hop and
Mhm.
she just glides. I
Mhm.
thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting having her, because that's almost like a delightful image. You'd think like,
In
oh,
a
like,
way,
teenage kind of figment that's like bopping along on the streetlights. Like that could be in a Miyazaki movie and it would be like a beautiful, charming thing. But in this one, it's like horror. It's like,
yeah,
what is this?
it's so unsettling.
It's so
Yeah,
yeah, so those would be my, and then I mean I will say, even though it was very hard to watch the scene where they film the rape scene, I
yeah,
mean, for something that is fake, but you just know what it's going to do to her reputation and the reactions of everyone watching it, that was really hard to watch, but like so well done. Like they
yeah.
nailed that uncomfortable moment, and which works really well as on along her kind of slow downhill descent into, you know, could say madness, but she got a lot going on.
Well, I mean, and it's not necessarily her either. So that kind of
Yeah.
gets to the questions. The first one I was going to bring up is just, is Mima real at all? Because there are some hints. I mean, or I almost want to say hints sometimes, but also just like reminders
Hmm.
that were just that even because this is like a very meta
It
story. It's got
Yeah,
some layers. It's like an actress, and then we're seeing it sort of blending with her reality. But then there are reminders to the viewer that like we're also just watching a movie as well.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Mima, even if like she's not real at all, obviously, because she's a character in Perfect Blue. And I
yeah.
feel like there are a couple reminders of that, like to even keep that at a distance from us.
Hmm. Hmm.
But also just the fact that that's the name of the character in the show that she's playing,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not even necessarily the name of the character, but it's the name of the character that she like hallucinates that she is, because she's
Hmm.
in that TV series about the killer, and then we see her talking to like the doctor,
Yep.
and she's like, "Oh, I'm Mima, I'm a pop star," and that's
Hmm.
like and other characters say that, and so that made me wonder this time if, because she also mentioned like there's a point where Mima's just like breaking down, and she's wondering if anything's real, and she's
Yeah.
talking to Rumi, and she's like, "Sometimes I wonder if I just got like hit by that bus and I'm still
Yeah.
asleep, or that truck or whatever," and then like that's what happens at the end
Yeah.
when she almost gets hit, and it made me want. It's just like another sort of layer into the just questioning what's real and what's not. And again, it's like
It
fascinating to talk about, but none
it
of the
breaks
answers
that.
are gonna
Yeah,
change how I feel about this movie.
it breaks down identity, like the concept of it in so many
Yeah,
different ways that it
right.
is hard to decide, like, yeah, what I could totally see an interpretation where she isn't real. I could see even the way that it keeps weaving in with the show that she's supposedly on, even towards the end, where when the serial killer, when she, the serial killer attacking her or her being the serial killer is woven into that plot of that show too.
Or her
And
agent being the serial
or
killer.
her, yeah, and is that really what happened, or is that part of the show? Like, is her entire existence just like everything we see is just her character in this show?
Right. Or just her in a mental hospital, like hallucinating stuff. I mean, we do get some hints as far as Mima's room goes.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that her agent was communicating with the stalker.
Yes.
through Mima's room and manipulating him that way.
And
She
yeah,
also
manipulating
recreated
him.
Mima's room because the outside is different. For the
Mhm.
rest of the movie, like there are no train tracks out there. There is not like an elevated train or anything. So like you can tell that that's
Mhm.
not the same place,
Yeah.
but it still doesn't really give you like the whole. I'm sure people have theories on this, and if we miss stuff, like throw them in the comments too.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean,
a fun movie to talk about.
we're
I'm
we're new
fully
to the
open to all interpretations of this movie,
Yeah, yeah. Some
but
movies take not just multiple viewings, but also time to
yeah,
to digest and kind of figure out. And so, like, we're new to this Perfect Blue thing. This will not be
yeah.
the last time. I'm definitely going to watch it again. I feel like you would be down to as well.
Absolutely. Well, that was why immediately I bought the Steelbook for this after I watched it the
Which
first
looks
time because I was
awesome.
like, I'm gonna need to watch this again.
And it's
And
only
there's
81 minutes. It
only 81
packs.
minutes, and there's some interviews on there too that I want to check out because I want to see some people talk about this movie and tell me like the people involved, like what they actually thought.
Yeah, yeah.
So what did
I
you
guess
have?
right now I think she was real, but I could totally see an interpretation where she isn't.
Because so I watched the Japanese with subtitles version first, and then the second
Uh,
time I watched it with the English dub just to kind of see some differences.
yeah.
The line at the end when she looks into her rearview mirror and says like I'm real basically, or it's the real me. I can't remember the exact
Yeah.
line. In the English dub version, that line is said by the actress who voiced Rumi, which is
Whoa.
just a very interesting little curveball.
Wrinkle. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Weird. Yeah,
It's yeah,
interesting. That's very
this is
interesting
one
and
of those
fascinating.
movies I'm fascinated to hear anybody's thoughts
Yeah, on this
on what's
movie,
going on here.
seriously. Um,
So what'd you have?
my only question was, Perfect Blue. What do you think the name means?
Oh god, I feel like I had looked this up at one point. Um, yeah, this is gonna bother me because I think it has something to do with a certain like psychological state.
Okay.
I think. Let me just Google this really quickly because
One interpretation or one idea I had was, the themes of cameras and videotape and everything being kind of a movie and a performance. Perfect Blue, maybe just, the color that a screen would go when the performance of the movie is just the blue screen, right?
sure.
This is 1997 VHS. When a VHS pops out, most of the time the TV screen go blue. So just kind of like a like perfect blue, like it's over, circle of life type of thing. I don't know that that was
So
one. That was
I
one
see
thing.
one here that says the title of the movie Blue can refer either to the psychological state Mima falls into or to the meaning that this color has in Japanese culture, which stands for purity and the female energy that any Japanese idol tries to achieve.
Oh, okay. So it
That's
is
just one thing I found
okay.
online from some
You,
interpretation on a college course
yeah.
site.
You know what?
So,
Do you think it's at all a coincidence that there's that famous indie movie by that obscure
oh
director
god,
that's just blue and it's just a blue screen and it's like an hour and a half and he tells like a story audio story, but
I
it's
know
just a
exactly
blue
what you're
screen.
talking about.
And is there some sort of was there like blue must have ties more to psychological stuff? I mean, other than
I
just
like your
just like
interpretation
blue
though
means
too of
red.
just kind of being the color of like kind of like media, like sort of blank media.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
I
an interesting one.
I was expecting there to be a scene, or I was expecting to walk out of here hoping to understand the name, but I didn't really. And interesting too, I don't think, unless I was wrong, does the iconic poster or cover of this movie, does that ever actually appear in the movie? Her laying in
Which
a
one?
field, her like
No.
laying in a blue field somewhere. I've like
Yeah, I don't think it does.
I thought that
I
was like
kept
a
waiting for it.
me too.
But then I did notice the second shot when like the sort of blood over the
Oh,
face.
that was
Because I
great.
had seen that one before too. But yeah,
Mhm.
the sort of typical poster shot.
Mhm.
I don't think we see that anywhere.
Yeah, that was interesting. I expected it, but
Yeah, I did too. I
yeah.
kept waiting for it.
No, yeah, that was my only real question, just to kind of dive
Okay.
into the meaning of the name.
All right.
Observations and musings.
Yeah. So for me, I already had I love how the fake Mima moves. The
Mhm.
browser they use when the
Yes.
internet, it's
Oh,
Netscape,
I'm so glad
which
you brought that up.
we are just old enough
Mhm.
to know this. Like, we're both 32, or you're 33 now,
I
aren't you?
am old, yeah.
God, you're so old.
I know. Good lord.
I'll be joining you
It's turning
soon.
to dust before our very eyes.
I did notice that. Also, just the line that Mima says at the beginning about how, like, oh, the internet's very popular these days.
Yeah.
That made me laugh really hard. But also, like, this movie was made in like the late 90s,
Mhm.
and it was just kind of an amusing thing to hear somebody be like, just call the internet. I mean, I had a coworker like 5 years ago who called the internet a fad, and it did remind me of that. But it was at least at the time when that was kind of a legitimate reaction to the internet,
Yeah, yeah,
not like
yeah.
it's our entire society is just like entwined in this
Completely entwined
thing
in
and
it.
it's
Yeah.
dependent on it.
Mhm.
But yeah, the Netscape browser was cool, and then I just had to mention the cuts,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
amazing those were. I mean, the way that they cut back and forth between certain things, like even just at the beginning, that how they show us how they're cutting between the performance on stage of her last song with her just buying groceries like a regular person.
Yeah.
And there's just constant reminders in here of like that all of this is fake.
Mhm.
Even like just kind of seeing the more professional and experienced actors like laughing 5 seconds before the director says action and then getting right into serious mode.
Yeah.
Like just constant little reminders that this is all pretend,
Mhm.
and nothing you see, whether it's like the image they're projecting or them on stage or them on camera,
Mhm.
like it's all manufactured and cultivated. It's not like none of it is real. Even
Yeah.
to little reminders of like the personalities that famous people display on talk shows.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that's all kind of chosen and set up for them as well. And they have to execute it and be engaging and charming at times too. But
Yeah.
none of it's real. And this movie just does such a great job with the way that it's cut to remind us of that.
And it's commentary on the audience too. Like at the beginning,
Yep.
there's those four guys, and it establishes like, yeah, they've been going around to concerts and causing trouble. And then like we know that it's her big final concert. She wants to make this big announcement, and then they disrupt it, and then the rest of the crowd is like fighting against these four people in the crowd. And she's at the mic, and she's just like, I just wanted to have this nice moment. She's like, I just wanted to have one nice moment with you. Can you just stop? And even that is already setting up the themes of like how much the audience kind of like imposes its will on like these
Yeah.
imaginary characters, and just like, yeah, the fans that you create can actually like come back around and affect your life. Just all sorts of little things. It's just really, really, it's like every frame, every little 10-second, 15-second shot has feels purposeful and intentful, with
Yes.
intent. And yeah, I definitely felt that. My observations and musings, I thought the stalker looked so weird at the beginning that it had to be a red herring.
Yeah. Same.
But I guess sometimes you can judge a book by its cover when it comes to creepy super fan stalkers. Like
Yeah.
he indeed was a creep. And then was he the boy from the Hit and Run that they show a newspaper clip of for like 4 seconds and then move on forever? She's like reading
No,
something.
that wasn't the stalker. That was the guy causing trouble at the concert who was like throwing stuff and like punched the stalker in the face.
Okay, that's who that was. Okay, because I thought
Or
maybe.
at least I'm thinking of that like kind of it was like a flyer in the elevator or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that guy.
Okay, because I guess I thought that maybe the stalker's face was messed up because he had been a hit and run when he was a boy, and there was going to be like some reveal
Maybe
that
there's a chance that
he
we're
had
thinking
ran.
of two completely different images.
Okay, yeah. Also the stalker and her agent, who both turn out to be quite villainous. Both have their eyes are really far apart. Did you notice that? They both have like the frog eye thing going
I did
on.
not notice that as far as her agent goes. So I didn't
Okay.
pick up a symmetry there.
I kind of did. I felt
Okay.
I was like, those are the only two characters that are like designed that way. Like everyone else
Sure.
looks normal, and then these,
Yeah.
it's like they're really weird. The end credits music is straight out of like a '90s talk show. I love how like, which is bold. Like I felt like it didn't fit, but I also felt like of course, like, at the end they're gonna zig for the music when you think they're gonna zag, but it's just so like so kind of almost happy and kind of like join us next week for another episode of and then yeah, my other thing was just I looked for the poster image but didn't find it. But no,
Yeah.
still it is what it is. There's still a lot of amazing, beautiful shots. It's interesting how this was so. It's the animation is beautiful in the way that a Miyazaki movie is, but it's more. I felt like it's more kind of gritty and maybe
Mhm.
not as detailed, a little more basic. But in exchange for that basicness, it gets kind of a raw, kind of gritty feel.
I've got an interesting
Like
tidbit about that, actually.
really, because yeah,
Yeah.
it felt almost like they're like this style of animation was like the VHS like beautiful, and then Miyazaki is like DVD beautiful,
Yeah.
like but they're both still really nice.
Yeah.
What do you?
So, I mean, I'll dive into tidbits
Yeah,
here.
do it.
I just have a couple. The first one was that the original 35 millimeter camera negative was accidentally destroyed. So all the surviving copies of this movie are just of lower quality.
Wow. Well, there you
And
go.
yeah, that
Fate, fate
right?
intervened.
I feel like it works really well for this though.
Me too. Me too. It feels. Yeah, it feels almost like the level of like a Saturday cartoon, but like more
Yeah.
hardcore, but like
Yeah.
still that style kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other is that this was supposed to be a live action movie and it became an anime when several funders pulled out in pre-production.
Well, thank God.
I think so too. I mean,
Money
it
not well spent right there.
right?
Yeah.
I just yeah, there this is just both of these things kind of go to show like sometimes just weird perfect things happen and come together to just make a great movie.
Did this director ever do a live action movie?
I don't think so.
Do you think because this was his first one that maybe them pulling out and then him doing the animated and it being so well just like changed the course of his whole career? Like, was he planning on doing live action movies and then was like, well, I guess this is my thing now?
I also guess I don't know if he was the director initially then.
Oh, that's a good point. I suppose, yeah.
If somebody knows that, let us know because I
Mhm.
did see that this was supposed to be live action, but I didn't really kind of follow up on that. It never really occurred to me that maybe he wasn't the guy,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? I'm not really sure. That's just a really interesting
Wow,
thought there.
this would not have worked as a live. I mean, it would have had to have been done so well for this to work as a live action movie, I feel like.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it could have,
It
but
could, but
I
like
this just it's I think this just lends itself to animation really well.
mhm.
He
Mhm.
also has a, very highly reviewed sort of mini series called Paranoia Agent,
Oh.
which, I might be trying to find now, given that I've seen,
Yeah.
like, his 4 big movies and
Mhm.
loved 2 of them.
Mhm.
So, that was all I had
All right.
for tidbits, and we can move on. I will try to do my best here and, kind of move around and bring this up, but it is time for the
Haha.
McCabe Coat of
Look at
Excellence.
that coat.
Look at that coat. We are big fans of McCabe and Mrs. Miller here,
Mhm.
particularly McCabe's amazing coat. And at the end of each episode, we like to give that coat out, kind of like the green jacket at the Masters,
Yep. Mhm.
to
Mhm.
anyone involved with the movie that we think is worthy of
Yep.
such a coat. We don't have to give it out if we don't think anybody earned it. But for me, I think it's the director.
Same.
It's Satoshi Kon. This is an amazing movie,
Yep.
and this feels like his vision through and through, and
Mhm.
just the way that everything worked so well together. That's just you need a director for everything to come together like
Yeah.
it does in this movie. So, are
Mhm.
we agreed here?
We are agreed here. Yes, that is a unanimous code of excellence to the director Satoshi Kon. Very well deserved. Um, yeah, I just don't think. I just think to make all this work with only 81 minutes
Yeah.
requires someone who is in command of everything and has a vision. To your point.
Oh, okay. Definitely got to wrap this up. My voice is
and we got another
deteriorating.
and we got another Twins game here today. So your
That's
voice has
true. It's.
only a few hours, and then it's back to the
I will
grind.
say though, I'm not going to be there this time
Uh
since it's in Houston. So I think my voice will still have some time to heal
All
until
right.
next Tuesday. That is.
Should we
But
get to closing statements?
on to closing statements. What do you got?
Perfect Blue is a very bold psychological thriller that is a must-watch for fans of anime, horror, and/or mind-bending movies in general. It demands a second viewing as a result of packing so much into its 88-minute runtime. A truly remarkable viewing experience.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yep.
if I ever get the chance to see this in theaters, I'm
Oh
gonna
my God.
have to.
For sure.
Just-
Mine was just one of the best animated movies ever made, and just more proof that animation can be about more than just cute movies for kids.
Oh my gosh, yes, amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend from
We don't
both,
need more
from
Secret
both
Life
of
of
us.
Pets movies.
No, we don't. I think that's a safe, right? Pretty much anybody watching this, I recommend it. I mean, it's definitely, it's a little adult, but again, you just need to see it to
It's a
believe it.
hard R for sure, but
It is.
yeah, don't let that. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
so in that sense, don't let the fact that it's an animated movie
Deter you.
make you think like your 10-year-old should watch this.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but on the other side of the coin, this is an adult psychological horror movie that is fantastic, and it's going to make you think, and you're going to have a long conversation about it afterwards with whoever you watch it with.
For sure. Is it my turn to put a wrap on the show?
It is. And just a reminder again that next week or next episode, we will be discussing Possession from 1981. Another just crazy, mind-bendy, what on earth did I just watch kind of movie. So look forward to that.
All right. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Illusions can't come to life.